Today on another episode of the Danville Discussion.
So now, the band you've been waiting for, Phineas and the Ferb Toads!
Candace, you're the 100th contestant? How serendipitous. This will be like a brother-sister thing. Now, I'm assuming you've heard our single. I mean, who hasn't, right? It's a big hit. So here's the words, but don't worry if you get lost. The lyrics are meaningless anyway. I'll point when it's your turn.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Danville Discussion, a podcast about all things related to Phineas and Ferb and beyond. My name is Caleb Dirksen and some of you may know me from my YouTube channel of the same name, home of several web series related to animation such as Caleb Reviews. If this is your first time listening to the Danville Discussion, well, let me tell you what this podcast is all about. Throughout this show, I watch and talk about each episode of either Phineas and Ferb or Hamster and Gretel, talking about all the references, whether it be in universe or cultural references, all the songs, all the gags, all the pros and cons, and all the other things that I'm able to find, and then finally, I will end things off by giving the episode a roller coaster rating. So, for today's episode, I'm getting into episode 4 of Phineas and Ferb, where we've got two segments for today. Are You My Mummy? Followed by Flop Stars. So, if you want to check out more episodes of the Danville Discussion, then go to anchor.fm/Caleb-Dirksen and it'll take you directly to the Danville Discussion website on Anchor. You can also share your feedback about the episode we discussed by emailing us at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with the series and episode title in the subject line. So, to start things off, let's find out when these segments first premiered. For Are You My Mummy, it first premiered on Disney Channel on February 15th, 2008, while Flop Stars premiered on Disney Channel on February 1st, 2008, and this segment marked the official series premiere of Phineas and Ferb because before it, we had Roller Coaster and London Beach Party of Terror that were aired as sneak previews for the show in the second half of 2007. Now, our first segment is going to be the discussion of Are You My Mummy? And Are You My Mummy was a story by Bobby Gaylor, Swampy Marsh, Martin Olson, and Dan Povenmire. The storyboards were by Kyle Baker and Mike Roth, and it was directed by Dan Povenmire. So, what's this episode about? Well, it begins with Phineas, Ferb, Candace, and their father Lawrence going to see the Mummy with Two Tombs at the Faro Theater.
I mean, you couldn't pick a better place to watch a classic old mummy movie.
In the movie, an explorer reads the hieroglyphics carved into the wall, and the incantation is O What Tagu Siam, which might be interpreted as Oh What a Goose I Am because of the pronunciation. And Phineas asks Lawrence where a mummy can be found, and the mummies are hidden deep in the bowels of the pyramid. Meanwhile, the explorer learns that the incantation will bring the mummy back to life and obey commands as he exclaims, "Well, beat me with a chicken." The mummy grabs a chicken and proceeds to beat him with it, and that made me laugh.
The incantation will make the mummy come to life and obey your commands. Well, beat me with a chicken. Ow! What? Ooh, hey, stop!
Phineas then asks Lawrence how to get into the pyramid, and he mentions the booby-traps that were often used. On screen, the mummy sets off one of his own booby-traps. Then Phineas tells Ferb that they should get their own mummy, and this leads into the song My Undead Mummy, which is a nice kind of pop rock tune in my opinion.
Let me tell you about my buddy, he's 3,000 years old. He's wrapped in bandages and covered in molded debris.
After the song ends, the boys discover that Lawrence has fallen asleep, so they set off to find a mummy, only for Candace to be on their tail. As they're doing this, Agent P heads out to receive his mission by getting on a slide behind an entrance in the stomach of the Big 8 display, a very cool spy entrance. As he's traveling down the slide in a platypus car, Major Monogram gives him his mission, but before he does, he accidentally reads his grocery list. Once Agent P has the details, he transfers to a submarine and sets the submarine to dive, but the water in the drainage pipe is shallow and the submarine scrapes along the bottom as it moves. Then Phineas asks a theater employee where the mummy exhibit is, but the employee needs a manager's assistance in answering that question. Another person comes up to find the restroom and the employee needs assistance with that question as well. And so the boys begin their journey by heading down a stairwell while Candace calls Warren so she can bust them, even though he's still asleep. As she runs after them, she knocks over a series of posts which hit a gumball machine and cause the gumball container to come loose and roll after her. Candace enters the stairwell and steps in a mop bucket full of water, which also has wheels. And her screams as the bucket carries her down the stairs alert Phineas and Ferb that the mummy is nearby. The gumball container rolls down the stairs behind the boys, and while they're running, Ferb jumps on Phineas's shoulders and uses an overhead pipe to lift both of them on top of the gumball container, and they do a few tricks while on top of the container, but that comes to an abrupt end when they slam into the wall above a door. The container rolls down the hall, and the boys congratulate themselves for getting past the first booby trap. The gumball container catches up to Candace, and as she's running from it, she tries the same trick as Ferb, but the pipe comes off in her hands. But she tries again, yet this flings her up into the overhead duct. After bouncing around in it several times, she comes back out right in front of the rolling container again. But the container rolls right past Candace, so she stops running and begins walking the other way. The container rolls up some stairs, activates the button for the elevator, and after a bounce against the stair railing, enters the elevator. Candace is still walking the other way and gets into what appears to be a different elevator, yet she doesn't notice that the gumball container is in the elevator car. After she gets in, she sees it, and when the car arrives at the next floor, she runs out. The gumball container starts moving again, rolling at the same speed as it had before it entered the elevator. Candace runs down some stairs and tries a door, but it's locked, so she keeps running. The gumball container is now deliberately chasing her since it is able to make hairpin turns down the stairs without having to bounce off of anything first. Shortly afterwards, the container splits open, and the loose gumballs cause Candace to go through a door into the supply room. She tries some of the gumballs, but her mouth gets clogged up because the bubble gum is so old and stale. Then butter and toilet paper rolls fall on top of her as she tries to get back up by leaning on a cabinet, which wraps her up like a mummy, and she walks off to look for Phineas with stiff arms and stiff legs just like mummies in movies traditionally are. Meanwhile, Agent P's submarine arrives at the beaver pond just as Dr. Doofenshmirtz is putting the finishing touches on his latest invention. Doof unexpectedly shoots Perry with a ray gun, capturing him in a bubble of pure evil with a blend of space-age polymers. Dr. Doofenshmirtz explains his plan to Perry, which is to release the water being held by the beaver dam into the ocean, raising the ocean level by 2%, thus giving him some beachfront property, and that he will use his woodinator to break up the beaver dam because it attracts wood like a magnet does metal. And then Doof taunts Perry by retrieving the paintbrush that got knocked out of his hand and using it to paint eyeglasses on the bubble, which goofed me a bit. A push from him sends the bubble and Perry drifting away. Back at the theater, Phineas and Ferb enter a different storage room, and Phineas repeats the incantation from the movie, but they get disappointed that the room contains nothing but fakey promotional junk. They head back out only to meet Candace in her mummy-like attire, thinking that she is an actual mummy, and the boys run away while Candace chases them. While they make their attempt to escape, their legs get locked together and both have to walk using their hands. They hide inside a standee for the movie Safari Man 2, which is in 2D, and Phineas comments on the angry, twisted soul hidden underneath those bandages. But they came down to get a mummy, so now they chase the mummy, and during the chase, Ferb manages to lasso the mummy and then they ride it like a bronco, but it doesn't last long because first Phineas, then both of them get tangled up in the toilet paper bandages until they finally capture the mummy by enclosing it in a wooden Egyptian coffin that looks like King Tut. Back at the beaver pond, Dr. Doofenshmirtz activates the woodinator, driving away the beavers, but Perry pins down one of the beavers, and the beaver takes a log and chews it down to a toothpick, but uses his own teeth to burst the bubble that has Perry trapped. They swap tails and Perry runs back to the beaver dam. But Doof fires the ray gun at him again, but manages to trap both of them in the bubble. Perry uses Doof's nose to burst the bubble, and it distresses Dr. D to learn that he has a pointy nose. The Woodinator finishes breaking up the dam, and the water rushes downstream into a pipe, but the pipe sends the water across town into the movie theater's basement. Phineas, Ferb, and Perry ride the coffin as the second booby trap of the water carries them along. The water breaks through the top of the Sphinx that is outside the theater, and it washes the toilet paper bandages away, revealing Candace. Phineas tries to introduce her to the mummy they caught, but it's nowhere in the area. Phineas calls out for the mummy, not realizing that Candace was the mummy, and Lawrence walks up and tells the kids that Mummy has supper waiting for them at home, which was also a good pun, and asks Candace why she's wet, which leaves her growling in frustration and her eye twitching.
Hey, Candace, you missed all the fun. Allow me to introduce our mummy. Hey, where's our mummy? Mummy? Mummy!
Well, Mummy has supper waiting for us at home. Candace, why are you all wet?
During the car ride back home, Ferb informs them how mummy brains get removed, to which Candace replies, "The lucky ones," and that's how the episode ends. Now for the references. The title of the episode could be a reference to the P.D. Eastman children's book, Are You My Mother? Yet Are You My Mummy could also be a reference to a line from the two-part episode from Doctor Who, The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances. But I haven't seen a full episode of Doctor Who, so let's go on. And during the song My Undead Mummy, the shot where Phineas, Ferb, and the mummy are walking across a log between two cliffs might be similar to that one part of the Disney animated film The Lion King during the Hakuna Matata sequence when Simba, Timon, and Pumbaa are walking across the log as Simba becomes an adult. Also, the incantation "Oh what a goose I am" is a play on the words "Oh what a goose I am," as I mentioned earlier, which would be used to trick someone into embarrassing themselves. I even spotted two Indiana Jones references with the two booby traps. The first being that the giant glass ball with gumball candy is just like the boulder that Indy has to run away from in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the second is that the flood caused by Perry and Dr. Doofenshmirtz is kind of like in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Then when Phineas and Ferb are running away from Mummy Candace, they can be seen walking on their hands with their legs entangled in a similar manner to Cat and Dog, the titular hybrid in the Nicktoons series Cat Dog. And the only thing I really remember watching out of that show was that one Cat Dog cartoon at the beginning of my VHS for the Rugrats movie. Then when it comes to the posters for movies that were previously shown at the Faro Theater, the movies they had are Moxie, Sharks, Dinor, Buzz the Movie, Scratchy, Safari Man 2, which was shown in 2D, Space Armada, Space Adventure 6, Monkey Men 2, and SA3. Out of those 10 movies, only 5 of them have some cultural references. Sharks is an obvious parody of Jaws, a classic from Steven Spielberg. Buzz the Movie has not one, but 2 cultural references in its poster. One in the title, which could be a parody of the movie RV, and the second in the artwork, which has a bus full of screaming people, and that might be a reference to Speed. For Space Adventure 6, there was a play in the online game Club Penguin, also called Space Adventure, and either of these could relate to the sign in the storage room. An early fun fact, Space Adventure was even carried on in later Phineas and Ferb episodes, including Not Phineas and Ferb, where it was only mentioned, Nerds of a Feather, where it was a major plot point as part of the convention that the boys go to, and the Candace Against the Universe movie, where Baljeet brings it up as a fan of the Space Adventure franchise. Then for Monkey Man 2, the title is a reference to Monkey Man, a character from Hey Arnold, which Dan Povenmire also worked on. But I haven't watched a whole lot of Hey Arnold though. And lastly, SA3, or I wonder if it could actually be Space Adventure 3, but that one alien in the poster resembles the Cybermen from Dragon Ball Z. And even though I haven't really watched much of that anime, I do remember that meme of Vegeta shouting, "It's over 9,000!" which was well known for its use in YouTube poops.
Vegeta, what does the scouter say about his power level? It's over 9,000! What, 9,000? There's no way that can be right.
Also, the cowboy standee closely resembles the cowboy from the On the Trail sequence in The Magnificent Few, so the movie On the Trail might have played in that same theater one time. Earlier, the theater lobby has a display for the upcoming movie Big Ape, the same display that Perry goes through in order to go off on his mission, and Big Ape is a primate that is about as large as several buildings, in reference to King Kong, and is also purple in color, which might be a reference to Grape Ape from Hanna-Barbera. Later on, after Perry went back to his owners, the boys and Perry were riding King Tut's coffin, with Mummy Candace inside it, in a similar way to the water rides at Thorpe Park, and during the flood, Phineas and Ferb ride on the water and down the stairs, showing an on-ride photograph as done famously on Splash Mountain at the Disney parks. Now some more fun facts. When Candace is in the elevator, the song I'm Windana and I Wanna Have Fun is heard. In production order, the song is not introduced until the very next segment, which we'll get to later. It also reveals that Major Monogram likes to eat blood sausage, and in real life, no one knows what sounds got associated with ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, since Egyptologists use what is called transliteration, which is at best 50% correct. Plus, even with the broadest consideration for cartoon simplification, the symbols that are read to awaken the mummy do not transliterate into Owatagu Siam. And Phineas and Ferb's original plan to get Candace the Mummy out of the theater was to roll it out on a skateboard, which was what they did before Doofenshmirtz flooded the path they were taking, which made them ride the current. And it appears that the amount of water in the beaver pond would not be enough to raise the level of an ocean by 2%. Plus, Dr. Doof takes his lab coat off for a moment, which reveals that he is wearing inflatable armbands, and this would show that he cannot swim. This would later be confirmed in the Season 2 episode Split Personality. The movies that are currently playing at the Faro Theater are Bones of Doom and The Mummy with Two Tombs. At one point, it seems as if the Safari Man 2 display changes to the Monkey Man 2 display because both appear to the left of the Space Armada poster and the Flying Saucer display. Yet it could be possible that the theater had more than one copy of the poster and Flying Saucer displays, and just happened to put each of them close to the separate Safari Man 2 and Monkey Man 2 displays when they got moved into storage. Considering what's in the episode, the Safari Man 2 display is somewhere to the right of the Monkey Man 2 display. This also marks one of the earliest accomplishments of Phineas and Ferb doing something in the opening title. In this case, they were fighting a mummy. And possibly one of the most interesting fun facts I discovered in the Faro Theater's basement, among the old movie signs, a Keep Left sign can be spotted, and Keep Left was the name of the band that Dan Povenmire was in when he was in college, and later coming fresh out of. Their self-titled first album from 1996 is out of print nowadays, but it can be downloaded off the internet as a set of MP3 music files. For some milestones, this is the first episode in production order that Isabella and Linda don't appear, but Buford does briefly appear in My Undead Mummy, and Linda is also mentioned at the end. Ironically, this is the first episode that Lawrence appears without Linda. Speaking of that song that I mentioned, it shows Phineas and Ferb's school as they think of their mummy, making this the first episode to show Phineas and Ferb's school, which is later revealed to be named John P. Tri-State Elementary. This is also the first time that Doofenshmirtz refers to his nemesis as just Perry instead of Perry the Platypus.
Oh, look at this, Perry. It's my paintbrush. You know, the one you knocked out of my hand a few moments ago.
And the first time Phineas gets scared. Also, on Israeli TV broadcasts, on the episode information, the title was shown in Hebrew as this right here, and I'm gonna bring up my Hebrew translator to read it out slowly.
האם את אמא שלי?
And if you're watching this on YouTube, you might see the symbol text for that Hebrew title right there, but it basically means, "Are you my mother?" And that doesn't really make sense because this episode is about the titular brothers hunting an Egyptian mummy. Now for the rest of the pros and cons, of course I laughed at the part where Monogram accidentally reads his grocery list.
Morning, Agent P. Doofenshmirtz is at it again. It appears that he's purchased a string of odd items. 1 pound of blood sausage. That's my grocery list. Here it is.
I also like this part with the manager and his assistant with deadpan voices when the boys are searching for the mummy exhibit.
Mr. Employee, sir, where's the mummy exhibit?
Manager assistance requested.
Yes.
These boys want to know where the mummy exhibit is.
It's in storage, in the basement.
Guess who's going to the basement?
As well as this moment when they find some pith helmets.
Look, pith helmets. We must be going the right way. Say something pithy.
When Candace tries to call Lawrence, his phone rings in his pocket, making him laugh as he thinks that it's a chest massager and lays asleep like a cat in the theater, which was both cute and funny.
That's it. I'm calling Dad. Oh, forget it.
Another hilarious moment I found is when Candace falls down the stairs in the mop bucket and Phineas and Ferb think it's the mummy.
I'm going in myself.
Hear that? Maybe it's the mummy.
When Phineas and Ferb are rolling on the ball, one of the stunts they do before hitting the wall is a Broadway-style show dance with their pith helmets, and I like that. It feels like something I would remix with a Richard Stone style like the score he did for Warner Brothers cartoons during the 90s.
What's this?
Incoming remix. Candace's failed attempts to avoid the giant ball were funny too. Candace accidentally pulls off the pipe that the boys swung onto the ball with, and then tries to go through the vent by swinging up, but ends up falling back down.
No! Give me a break!
When the boys are hiding from Mummy Candace behind the Safari Man 2 poster, this part right here got a bit of a chuckle out of me as well.
Wow, I didn't expect him to be so scary. I mean, can you imagine the angry, twisted soul hidden under those bandages? Makes me shudder.
And that scene at the end with front-facing Phineas, Ferb, and Candace all at the same time. I will never not be weirded out by that part. Also at the end, we have Ferb's line followed by Candace's response to him, and with Ferb's line, I found this one gross yet goofy at the same time.
You know, mummies have their brains pulled out through their nose.
The lucky ones.
As for the rest of the subplot with Perry and Doofenshmirtz, we have this occasional running gag once again, where as soon as Perry arrives, Doof says, by incredible, of course I mean completely credible!
Perry the Platypus, as usual, your timing is incredible. And by incredible, of course I mean completely credible!
Then it's followed by him describing the bubble trap, which is made of pure evil, and a blend of space-age polymers. That was kind of funny right there.
No use, Perry the Platypus. I made this out of something that cannot be penetrated. Pure evil! And a blend of space-age polymers.
We have another cool escape method from Perry, where he gets help from the beaver to pop the bubble using a toothpick, but later the beaver's teeth. But my favorite moment in this entire segment has to be Perry using Doof's nose to pop the bubble they're both in, and Doof wondering if his nose is really that pointy. That moment was so hilarious, as Dr. Doofenshmirtz does have a pointy nose, yet it can also be as pointy as a needle.
What? Is my nose really that pointy?
And the animation was mostly good too. I don't know which specific studio animated this segment and which other studio did the other segment, or if it was both that did the whole episode, but the studios are Wang Film and Rough Draft Korea. The characters' movements are very expressive with the use of squatch and stretch, plus the camera positioning on Candace as she's running from the ball was neat. I even noticed how Phineas sometimes moves like a Simpsons character when he and Ferb are behind the Safari Man 2 standee, because I've seen how expressive the movements are in the classic Simpsons episodes, whether it be the mouths, their arms, or just their bodies in general. My only nitpick about it is that when Candace moves her mouth while speaking with old stale bubblegum inside, the movement of her mouth may seem slightly stiff. There are some animation errors I was able to spot, such as when the giant ball runs down the stairs, the door it goes through shows a label saying stairs, but when the camera shifts to the other side, the label says stairwell. Another error is where Phineas and Ferb are dancing on the ball with their pith helmets, but when they crash into the wall, the hats are gone. And when Candace screams as she's being chased by the ball, her mouth doesn't move when the camera zooms out in a cut. And at one point, the bubblegum in Candace's mouth changes from pink to purple. Then when Dr. Doofenshmirtz is painting the name of his invention on his woodenator, he's seen misspelling the inator suffix as enator with an E in place of the I, and it reads woodenator. And then Doof paints a silly face on the bubble Perry is trapped in, but in the next scene of the subplot where Perry is still in the bubble, the face is gone, probably because the paint might have been washed away by the water in the river as Perry was floating across in the bubble. But overall, this is another good episode with a lot of great humor, a catchy song, another fantastic subplot with Perry and Doof, a ton of cultural references, and some good animation. This is something that I would recommend. Now, our next segment to talk about is Flop Stars. And Flop Stars was a story by Swampy Marsh and Dan Povenmire. It was storyboarded by Sherm Cohen and Antoine Gilbeau, and it was directed by Dan Povenmire once again. And the plot is as follows. Phineas, Ferb, Candace, and their mother Linda are watching TV around the breakfast table, and a commercial comes on announcing there will be auditions held for the next Super American Pop Teen Idol star at the Googleplex Mall.
But maybe you've got what it takes to be the next Super American Pop Teen Idol star! Auditions open today at the Googleplex Mall in beautiful downtown Danville.
Auditions today?
Yes, today! At 2 o'clock sharp.
Candace is extremely excited and rushes upstairs to call Stacy with the good news. Phineas says that being a pop star would be fun at first, but would then get dull quickly. He laments that there isn't a way to do it just once and quit, yet Linda explains that he is talking about a one-hit wonder. A flashback reveals that she was once known to the world as Lindana. Her song, I'm Lindana and I Wanna Have Fun, rose to the top of the charts, but she immediately threw a diva tantrum and her song soon became elevator music. She sang one reunion concert years later and never sung again. She denies to the boys that this has happened, but has nonetheless inspired them. And so Phineas scribbles out a checklist of the steps needed to become a one-hit wonder. While Phineas and Ferb are working on writing their hit single, which according to them should be done by lunch, Stacy is helping Candace pick out her outfit for the audition, going through lots of outfits, including something Candace found in her mom's closet, which is her Lindana outfit, which finally ends with Candace's standard clothes, and Stacy says she should have tried that on first. Taking the toilet entrance, Perry heads to his lair where Major Monogram is waiting for him on his big screen communication device. Monogram informs Agent P that Dr. Doofenshmirtz has been buying up construction toys at an alarming rate, and that Perry's mission is to find out what he is up to and put a stop to it. On his way to his mission, Perry pulls up alongside Linda's car at a stoplight, and Linda looks over, sees him, and then does a double take. Thinking quickly, he puts on a disguise, wearing Groucho glasses, and luckily she buys it. Candace and Stacy arrive at the audition, and Candace is shocked to see so many people there. She gets even more stage fright when she looks behind her and sees the rest of the crowd. Stacy gives her a pep talk and Candace gets overly excited, leaving her hair in disarray. Just then, Jeremy Johnson, her secret crush, shows up. Candace fixes her hair and covers with, and that is what a gorilla looks like when you try to take away its food, which was funny.
Hey, Candace.
And that is what a gorilla looks like when you try to take away his food. Oh, hi, Jeremy.
Jeremy explains that he is not there to audition, but to hear the hot new band, PFT. The 100th contestant gets to sing on stage with the band, and by coincidence, Candace goes through the turnstile as the 100th contestant. She is rushed up on stage and finds out that PFT stands for Phineas and the Ferb Tones, with Phineas playing the guitar, Ferb on keyboards, and Isabella and the Fireside Girls as backup singers, also known as the Ferbettes. Phineas is super excited to find out that Candace is the 100th contestant, proclaiming it will be like a brother-sister thing. he hands her a sheet of music of their hit single Gitchee-gitchee-goo, explaining that the words are meaningless and reminding her not to worry if she gets lost. The band starts singing and the crowd is really getting into it. Then Phineas cues up Candace. She is furious that the boys have beaten her to her dream of becoming a pop star and refuses to sing. Then she threatens to tell Mom and storms off the stage.
I said a bow, chicka bow wow.
Candace!
Wait a minute! What are you doing?
I'm cueing you.
How did you get a hit single?
Well, it wasn't easy. It took most in the morning and half a dozen phone calls. But if you're willing to put in the work...
That's it! I'm gonna tell Mom.
Okay, tell her what?
I'm just gonna tell.
Gitchee-gitchee-goo means that I love you.
After the song, Ben Baxter from Hugo Records offers to talk about PFT's future, and Phineas, showing how young he is, finds it cool and claims that he could be a psychic. I thought that moment was hilarious.
Hi, I'm Ben Baxter, Huge O Records. Why don't you come by my office in an hour and we can talk about your future?
Future? Cool. He must be a psychic.
After rushing off, Candace drags Linda back to the audition stage in an attempt to bust her brothers, and she points to shadows behind a curtain and tells her mom it's them. But the curtain pulls back to reveal Marty the Rabbit Boy in his musical blender. Not believing that the boys were ever on stage, Linda takes Candace to get her eyes examined. Meanwhile, Agent P arrives at the building where Dr. Doofenshmirtz has set up a second office. Because Perry is still wearing the Groucho glasses, Doof mistakes him as his new temp, and he explains to the temp that he is just in time for his latest maniacal plan to unleash an unprecedented reign of terror upon the entire tri-state area. But Dr. Doof is surprised when Perry removes his disguise, and still confused that Perry is a temp, he asks, "Are times that hard?" Which was a nice gag from Doof.
Oh, are you my new temp? Well, let me just catch you up to speed. I know it's a bit of a mess. I'm just putting the finishing touches on my latest maniacal plan. You'll see in a few minutes, I will unleash an unprecedented reign of terror upon the entire tri-state area. And Perry the Platypus will never be the wiser. Perry the Platypus? You're a temp? Are times that hard?
Candace walks into the parking lot with her new glasses, which she immediately takes off in disgust, and then sees advertisements all over town for the PFT One City in One Day tour. There's one on a bus that is driving away, but Candace is more interested in showing her mom the huge poster on the side of a nearby building. Undaunted by the arrival of his nemesis, Dr. Doofenshmirtz pulls the lever to activate his giant robot building, which extends its arms and legs and starts walking, wreaking havoc on downtown Danville. It comes to the building where the PFT poster is hanging, but stops and turns around thanks to Agent P's quick rewiring job. Meanwhile, Candace drags her mom out of the store to see the advertisement, but by the time they arrive, the building is gone. As it turns out, Phineas was allowed to put it up on the building for free because it was scheduled for demolition. On her way back into the mall to pay for the jacket she ran out with, the security guard recognizes her as Lindana, claiming to be a huge fan, but she still has to pay for the jacket. Dr. Doof decides that he can't ignore Perry any longer and traps him in a robotic-type handcuff device, and claiming that he's won, he relaxes with a nice, tasty deli platter, offering some of it to Perry, along with some freshly ground pepper. At Hugo Records, Ben Baxter is trying to negotiate a contract with Phineas and the Ferb Tones. Part of the deal is for a follow-up single, and this is when Phineas decides to throw his one-hit wonder diva tantrum and storms out of the office and into the elevator with Ferb and the Ferbettes in tow. Then Ferb pulls out the checklist and checks off diva tantrum and elevator music. Baxter thinks of a whole bunch of ways in which they can use the one tape of their performance into merchandise for the next 20 years, but then one of the executives points out the giant robot heading in their direction. Meanwhile, Doof keeps grinding the pepper container until there's a very tall pile of pepper on the plate, which Perry blows into his face. But Dr. Doofenshmirtz is unfazed and laughs until he figures out that it wasn't him, but the robot that Agent P wanted to make sneeze. The giant robot sneezes and blows Doof and Perry into the Hugo Records building. On his way through, the tape gets caught up with them, out of the hands of Ben Baxter, and Perry uses it to grab hold of a flagpole and save himself. but Dr. D lands on the top of a truck with a mattress on top of it. Unfortunately for Doof, it comes from the Amazing Folding Mattress Company, which then proceeds to fold up with him inside, followed by him getting squished by his own giant robot and shouting, "Curse you, Perry the Platypus!" With Perry in tow, Phineas, Ferb, Isabella, and the Fireside Girls take a transit bus back to the Googleplex Mall for their reunion concert. Back at the mall, Marty the Rabbit Boy has just been declared the winner. Jeremy talks some sense into a dejected Candace by explaining that if she wants to sing, she should just sing and not worry about busting her brothers, and then he leaves. Then Phineas calls out to Candace asking her whether she still wants to help them sing as the 100th contestant. She accepts it, takes the stage, and sings with the band, and the crowd loves it. Candace is in belief that Phineas and Ferb are going to be her ticket to stardom, and she realizes that she's been looking at her brothers all wrong, and that they're not nuisances at all, as Phineas announces to the crowd that this is the last time that PFT will be singing that song, as they're retiring, and Candace is crushed. Everyone leaves and the lights are turned off as the mall closes, leaving Candace alone in the dark, and that's all there is for this episode.
Not a nuisance? They're my ticket to...
Thanks, you've been great. This is the last time we're ever gonna sing that song. We're retiring. Good night.
The mall is now closed and will reopen at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you for shopping with us.
And now let's go over the allusions and cultural references, starting with the title, which is a pun on the term pop stars. And we have a show within the show in a similar manner to Itchy and Scratchy from The Simpsons, where the reality show that's being presented in the episode is called The Next Super American Pop Teen Idol Star, which is a parody of many music reality shows such as American Idol, the original British Pop Idol, and The X Factor. Linda's one-hit wonder stage name during the 80s is Lindana, which sounds like a play on another popular singer during the 80s, Madonna, also known as the Queen of Pop. Plus, Lindana's one-hit song is I'm Lindana and I Wanna Have Fun. Sound familiar? The name sounds a lot like another 80s pop song, Girls Just Wanna Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper. And also, there are two references to Hanna-Barbera's The Jetsons. The first one being that Candace picked some clothes to try on before deciding to wear her normal clothes once again, which is what Judy Jetson did in A Jetson Christmas Carol. First, Candace dresses like a beautiful diva with a blue dress and her hair is big and wavy, which Stacy thinks is too much, and this is followed by her dressing up in a bikini, which is too little, then a pinafore, which is too clean, and then she's dressed like a hippie, which is too dirty, then a street rapper, a goth, and even Lindana. She actually wears her mom's Lindana clothes and hairdo, but Stacy finds that it's too retro. And the rest of what she dresses up in to try out before going back to her normal clothes includes a construction worker, a cowgirl, a biker, a sailor, a gorilla, an astronaut, a clown, and a Native American with a war bonnet, which, that's gotta be racist nowadays, I swear to God. That stuff might have still been fine back then, but this is freaking 2022. This is an age where you can't display a white character in traditional indigenous clothing in media these days, or even refer to Native Americans or other indigenous peoples as quote-unquote Indians, because that stuff has aged incredibly poorly by today's standards, especially when you look back at certain elements in films like Walt Disney's Peter Pan, which is a very infamous example of that. But that doesn't necessarily affect this episode, since there are more things that I like in here, which I'll explain later. But poorly aged things aside, some of those costumes were actually worn by all 5 members of the Village People, who were best known for the song YMCA back in the 70s. The other similarity to the Jetsons is the strong parallel between this and the episode A Date with Jet Screamer, where similar to how Candace participates in a musical contest with a song based on nonsensical words that was created by her younger brothers, Phineas and Ferb, Judy wins a musical contest and a song is performed for her based on nonsense words created by her little brother Elroy. The song is Eep Op Ork Ah Ah, and just like with Gitchee-gitchee-goo, the lyrics say that these words mean I love you. The scene where Perry flushes himself down the toilet to get to his lair is similar to that plot point in the movie Flushed Away, which is the third and final collaboration between DreamWorks and Aardman, where the rap protagonist is flushed down the toilet and whisked away to a city hidden in the sewers. And not only does Agent P don the Groucho glasses to avoid being recognized, but when he is invited in by Dr. Doofenshmirtz, Agent P breaks the fourth wall and waggles his eyebrows while looking at the audience, in the same manner as Groucho Marx from the Marx Brothers. When Candace becomes stressed, Stacy has her punch her purse, much like Burgess Meredith's character has Rocky Balboa punch a slab of meat when he is stressed in the Rocky franchise. And I've not seen the Rocky films yet, but I think I first heard about Rocky in the Angry Video Game Nerd episode Game Glitches, when the nerd, who's played by James Rolfe, tries playing the Rocky video game on the PlayStation 2, only to see the return of the glitch gremlin, and I do remember the song Eye of the Tiger being part of the Rocky IV soundtrack. And when we see Marty the Rabbit Boy in his musical blender, the tune that Marty is playing on his blender is Blue Danube by Johann Strauss II. Plus, there's a scene where a Hugo Records executive reacts to the approaching robot building that Doof is controlling, reacting in the same way that people do in Japanese monster movies like Godzilla.
The giant robot is coming right at us!
And in that same scene, there's one time where the show becomes self-referential, where Ben Baxter, the CEO of Hugo Records, says that they will use the VHS tape to create a reality TV series called The Phineas and Ferb Show. Moving on to some fun facts here, Ferb doesn't have an actual speaking line in this episode, but he does sing at the end of Gitchee-gitchee-goo, and his singing voice is brought to life again by Danny Jacob. And for the evil jingle, the normal jingle is used twice in this episode when we see Doofenshmirtz's robot building in its normal state.
Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated!
Everything is ready.
But the second time, when Doof says that Perry is too late, the jingle is cut off by the end when we cut to the interior, and that was a funny moment too.
Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated!
Sorry, Perry the Platypus, but you are too late.
And by broadcast order, this is the first time the evil jingle is used. The magazine shown during Linda's explanation of a one-hit wonder is called Monotunes Magazine, and that name could indicate that it focuses exclusively on one-hit wonders. And in the Hugo Records office, you can see a copy of Linda's Lindana record being marked with a 1985 release. Also, I find it strange that outside of singing Gitchee-gitchee-goo, Isabella only has one line of dialogue in this episode, and she says this.
Wow, what a great painting! How did you get permission for that?
Perry breaks the fourth wall when he looks straight at the camera and raises his eyebrows with his Groucho disguise. When he's falling, he even saves himself from the fall, not by the giant foldering mattress, but by using the videotape to wrap around a pole to break his fall. I guess this incident is what made Perry decide to carry his parachute in the future in broadcast order. And there is a visual play on words when Candace is shown punching Stacy's bag. Get it? Punching bag? The guitar that Phineas plays when they perform the song is the same one that Ferb strummed earlier in the episode after the I know what we're gonna do today line, colored yellow and white on the big end. Also, when Phineas says he isn't too young to be a pop star, he's actually correct, as there are many celebrities who are children, even singers. People like Ian Armitage, who plays young Sheldon Cooper in Young Sheldon, which is a prequel spin-off of The Big Bang Theory, and Jacob Tremblay, who voiced Luca in the Pixar film Luca. And for singers, back at the time of this episode, there were people like Justin Bieber. In fact, this is one of few times that Phineas has said no in response to someone asking him if he was too young to be doing whatever he was doing. And I kind of laughed at that right there.
By the way, aren't you a little young to be pop stars?
No.
Even the Disney managers love the song Gitchee-gitchee-goo so much that they requested a musical number in every episode after this. On May 20th, 2013, iTunes released a special version of this episode featuring a commentary from Norm and Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz, and said commentary was paired with No More Bunny Business from Season 2. And in the original script, Jeremy purchased the PFT song on a compact disc as a CD single and was listening to it on his Walkman, but then it was changed to an MP3 and his music player was changed to an iPod-like device to make it more modern for the 2000s, though there still exists some Walkman devices as digital media players. Yeah, because before Apple revolutionized the music industry with the iPod, Sony did it first with the Walkman in 1979 as a series of portable cassette players and then portable CD players. The host from The Idol show was later identified as Phil in the Across the Second Dimension movie. For both Gitchee-gitchee-goo and I'm Wendonna and I Wanna Have Fun, both of these songs have an extended version in future episodes. Gitchee-gitchee-goo has an extended version in Phineas and Ferb musical Cliptastic Countdown, and I'm Wendonna and I Wanna Have Fun has an extended version in Ladies and Gentlemen Meet Max Modem, and both extended versions were even on the first soundtrack for the show. In broadcast order, Isabella is first seen with an orangish bow and her Fireside Girl uniform on, but no beret. This is exactly like Candace loses her head when she wore her regular pink bow with her Fireside Girl uniform without the beret when we first see her. In both situations, she is seen in the rest of the episode with her signature pink dress and pink shoes on later. She later has it this way at one point in We Call It Maze. And also Ben Baxter is voiced by Jeff Bennett, who is as highly well known as Rob Paulsen. Jeff has done voices for Animaniacs as such characters as Baloney the Dinosaur, a parody of Barney, as well as in Freakazoid as Cave Guy, Candle Jack, Lord Bravery, The Huntsman, and more. And he is the current voice of Mr. Smee in some Peter Pan-related media from Disney, like in Return to Neverland and Jake and the Neverland Pirates. He was also the announcer of Kids WB during its early years.
The mystery is over. This fall they've come home.
It's time for Animaniacs.
That's right. The Animaniacs have left their old network behind.
Arrivederci. Au revoir. Sayonara.
And have come back home to join their fellow Warner Brothers stars.
Reporting for work, sir.
It's the start of a whole new network for kids.
Kids WB. And no grown-ups allowed.
Suffering succotash. Sylvester and Tweety are on the case.
In a brand new mystery series.
Earthworm Jim leaps out of his hit video game and into his own show.
Oh, groovy!
A new hero is unveiled. Steven Spielberg presents Freakazoid.
Don't forget to freak out.
And Piggy and the Brain have taken over their very own Kids WB show.
You pondering what I'm pondering?
No! So sit tight, because this morning you'll get to see not one, but two brand new episodes of the Animaniacs.
Animaniacs!
Welcome to Kids WB, and all new Animaniacs is next.
And that voice he used was carried over to an extremely goofy movie as Chuck the Sportscaster.
Max, Goof's father, Goofy! It's patriarch and son pitted against each other in a battle of skill and dexterity.
And I hear a hint of that voice in here as he's voicing Ben Baxter.
Who needs them? We've still got this videotape of their performance. We can do live CDs, DVDs, podcasts. Heck, we can digitally recreate their images to make our own sitcom, The Phineas and Ferb Show. We can squeeze 20 years of entertainment out of this one videotape.
What a legend, that Jeff Bennett. But this episode first aired in Latin America on December 31st, 2007 before it aired in the US, so its world premiere was ahead of its time. For the continuity facts, Gitchee-gitchee-goo is heard in several more episodes after this, including a caveman version in Tri-Stone area. The folding mattress truck that Dr. Doofenshmirtz falls on is seen for the second time in Ready for the Bettys, while Stacy and Candace are cleaning the outside parts of the Bettys truck. Plus, Dr. Doofenshmirtz traps Perry using the arms device, just like in Roller Coaster, but it seems that Dr. Doof has upgraded the device as it now includes a band for Perry's midsection in addition to the other four for his limbs. In the character commentary for this episode, Doof wonders why he doesn't use the mechanical arms anymore. And a clip from this episode is seen during the Finnabella montage, and the episode is also brought up in the final song in Last Day of Summer, when Phineas recalls that they were one-hit wonders with a big hit song. And the other milestones include that this is the first episode where Phineas sings in broadcast order, as well as Candace overall, and also the first time Candace sees the big idea or part of it disappear. So now I'm going to talk about the rest of my pros and cons, and I think the songs in this episode are good. The audition medley was hilarious with that kid who sings badly to the point of being punched off the stage by a boxing glove.
Oh, boy, did that kid stink or what?
I'm with Donna and I Wanna Have Fun is a nice 80s style pop song. Gitchee-gitchee-goo would have to be the best song in the entire episode. By this song alone, I think I actually remember first watching this episode back in the show's early years. But I assume it could also be the musical Cliptastic Countdown episode I watched with this song back then. I don't know.
Bow, chicka, bow, wow. That's what my baby says. Mow, mow, mow. And my heart starts pumping. Chicka, chicka, chew up. Never gonna stop. Gitchee-gitchee-goo means that I love you.
But one memorable moment I found is when after Candace tries different clothes and then picks her normal clothes, Stacy says that Candace should have tried that on first.
Perfect. Nice, huh?
Yeah, you should have tried that on first.
Let's go!
I chuckled at the running gag with Marty the Rabbit Boy and his musical blender. Later on, Candace says that she should have taken blender lessons.
Once again, Marty the Rabbit Boy and his musical blender!
Come on, we're getting you an eye exam.
No, wait!
And the winner of today's next Super American Pop Teen Idol star is Marty the Rabbit Boy and his musical blender! Oh, give him a hand! He's going to Hollywood!
Hey, Candace. What's wrong?
I'm better than that guy. Oh, I should have taken blender lessons.
There's also the memorable part where Phineas throws his diva tantrum at Ben, declining the offer for a follow-up single.
We're prepared to offer you a very lucrative contract if you'll just sign exclusively with us for your follow-up single.
Follow-up single? Who do you think we are? Some two-bit hacks who'll keep writing new songs just because you pay us obscene amounts of cash? Phineas and the Ferb tones are strictly a one-hit wonder. Good day to you, sir.
Speaking of Ben, that's one con that I have with this episode most of the time. Sometimes he can come off as greedy, similar to Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob, as he's desperate to squeeze out money just from that video cassette alone. He's probably my least favorite character in this episode. And the note that Ferb plays when Phineas asks him how's the catchy tune coming is actually lower than the note the song starts on at B position instead of C position, and it kinda confuses me a little.
How's the catchy tune coming along? Excellent. We'll be done by lunch.
But for the Perry Doof subplot, there's another innovative entrance to Perry's lair, which is flushing himself down the toilet and swimming down to his lair. Perry's Groucho Marx disguise was cool, and as the robot building is attacking the downtown area, Doofenshmirtz says this funny line, "When it comes to Havoc, nobody reeks like me."
When it comes to Havoc, nobody reeks like me.
I also chuckled at how after Doof asks Agent P if he would like some pepper, he constantly waits for him to answer, but Perry never really speaks. This gag is just like in Slender.
Here you go, Perry the Platypus. Care for some pepper? Just say when. Anytime.
I even thought it was funny how Doof claims himself to be more of a paprika man, as he assumes that Perry likes a lot of pepper.
Oh, you sure like a lot of pepper. I'm more of a paprika man myself.
And my favorite part is Doof's defeat moment. He lands on the mattress, which then folds and squishes him, and then his own robot crushes him as he curses Perry for the last time.
Whew, what an unbelievable stroke of luck. I'm okay. It's still better than... Curse you, Perry the Platypus!
The animation was good throughout, and I like how the characters have a bouncy feel to them, especially as they're dancing. In general, it's spontaneous and expressive, and it also helps with the action scenes with Perry and Doofenshmirtz. But I have also spotted some errors, like when Candace brought the kitchen television along with her while running, the screen was frozen, and when she's freaking out about the long line and Stacy shakes her by the shoulders, Stacy's eyes flicker from brown to blue, back to brown, and then blue again. Before Phineas has the diva fit, there are 3 errors that are seen at exactly the same time. First, Isabella's bow is red, but when they're walking towards the elevator and in the elevator, her bow is pink again. Second, Phineas's shirt is missing a stripe, but after he is asked if he's too young, the stripe is back. And third, Millie's patches are missing from her sash, but after that, the patches are there again. Then when the gang is in the elevator, Isabella's bow is off-center. Also, before Phineas and the Ferb tones get on the bus, Ferb's eye at the front becomes bigger than his eye at the back, and it's the same when Ferb is sitting on the bus, and when Candace sees the painting of PFT, Ferb's smaller eye has a black circle around it, if you can look closely at it. Earlier, right before Phineas says it's a big hit, Candace blinks and small bags appear under her eyes. Then she blinks again and the bags disappear and never return. When the Ferbettes sing "That's What My Baby Says" the first time, Addison's headband seems to disappear and reappear, and her hair becomes transparent in some frames. Then when the audience sings "Gitchee-gitchee-goo" means that I love you with the band, Jeremy's mouth can be seen going in front of the girl in front of him. At the beginning, during the flashback to when Linda was Lindana, a beauty mark can be seen on her right cheek, but in the shot of her in the elevator and the newspaper saying she's back, the mark is gone. Plus, her hair bow is on the wrong side. And when Candace tries on her bikini, her eyes are black instead of blue. And lastly, Perry's bill has the same salmon orange color as his tail instead of the usual bright orange when he looks at Linda in the car before putting on his disguise. But that's pretty much all I have to give out about this, and it's another fun episode. Although there are a few minor issues with it, the rest of the episode is enjoyable, and I would say it's one of the highlights of Season 1. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a fan of music. Now, our last subject is the credit sequences. For Are You My Mummy, when aired by itself, the end credit sequence is just a repeat of the first and last verses of My Undead Mummy, and for Flop Stars, it cuts back home where Linda is watching TV when a commercial comes on for a new Lindana compilation album called The Essential Lindana, Still Fun, which is available in different languages, including Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, Dutch, French, Scottish, Canadian, German, Japanese, Latin, Greek, Esperanto, Swedish, Russian, Pig Latin, Tagalog, Dog, Korean, Taiwanese, Swahili, Bulgarian, Irish, Icelandic, Australian, Aboriginal, Yiddish, etc. But then Linda turns it off just as Phineas and Ferb come into the room and ask what she was watching, and she says that she wasn't watching anything, which puts an end to the episode.
You loved her in the 80s. Get ready to love her again. Lindana's mega hit, I'm Lindana and I Wanna Have Fun, has been remixed and retranslated into your favorite languages. Portuguese, Dutch, Canadian, Japanese, Esperanto, Pig Latin, Dog, and everyone's favorite.
Hey, Mom, what you watching?
No, nothing.
And this gives us one additional cultural reference, where the Essential Lindana album is another one of those compilation albums that have the words The Essential, and then the name of the artist. I've seen people like Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Michael Jackson getting their own The Essential compilations. 2 fun facts about this credit sequence. First off, for comedic purposes, Canadian is listed here even though it's an accent, but I am Canadian in case some of you don't know, and like many people from Canada, I have the same accent as those from the United States, and therefore it's a North American accent in general, and such nonsensical languages as Pig Latin and Dog are also included. Australian and Aboriginal are also listed as 2 separate languages despite being the same thing, being an accent. And secondly, this is the first episode in which another character besides Isabella asks what you doing, except Phineas asks what you watching, in this case, and that use of the running gag was funny. Matter of fact, I thought everything about this credit sequence was hilarious, from the languages that the Lindana song or album is available in, to Phineas's use of the "what you doin" running gag, and lastly, there's yet another error I found, and that's regarding one of the listed languages, Tagalog, which is one of the official languages of the Philippines. In this scene, it's accidentally misspelled as Taglog without a second A and split into two words. Taglog? What does that even mean? But yeah, this is a hilarious credit sequence and a nice way to end the episode. And finally, we will go and end things off with our roller coaster rating. So now, out of 10 roller coasters, how many am I going to give these two segments as well as the whole episode? For Are You My Mummy, it's going to be a 9 out of 10 because a lot of the jokes and especially the song are well done. It's mostly well paced, and even the animation was fine too, though it does have a few minor stiff parts. And then Flop Stars, 9 out of 10 as well, a lot of good humor, a good pop song, some good animation, and some good pacing, but the businessman can feel like the typical greedy boss at times, and one of the costumes that Candace tries on doesn't age very well. And with that, the whole episode is a 9 out of 10. It's definitely another Ferbtastic episode that I look forward to seeing again sometime soon. And it's also one of the highlights of Season 1 like the last episode I went through. Another really good episode. And now it is time for the Twitter poll results of last week. So let's turn over to our reporter and see if he's recovered from his injuries from the tinfoil ball.
Hello, listeners. This is your reporter. Last week, just as I finished reading the Twitter poll results and showed off the magnetism magnifier, I got hit and got a giant tinfoil ball on my back, and I had to be rushed to the hospital as soon as the ball hit the ground and stopped. Thankfully, I managed to recover from those injuries that were inflicted on me by that 2-ton ball. So now, without further ado, here are the results of last week's Twitter poll. We asked our listeners, how were you first introduced to hashtag Phineas and Ferb? Hashtag Danville Discussion poll. The choices were A. Disney Channel, B. Toon Disney or Disney XD, C. Disney Plus, or D. Other. Please reply. 8% said Disney Plus, 11% said Other, whether it be DVD compilations, digital downloads, Family Channel Canada, or anywhere else. 31% were there for Toon Disney and later Disney XD. And 50% were there at the beginning for Disney Channel, winning this poll. There were 26 votes in total. Now back to Caleb to tell you how he was introduced to Phineas and Ferb and bring you a brand new Twitter poll. This is the reporter signing out.
Thanks once again, reporter. Now, as for me, how was I first introduced to the show? Well, I pretty much remember that I actually did not first watch the show on Disney Channel, even if I was on vacation at Walt Disney World at the time, and it was certainly not Toon Disney or Disney XD because 1. The show didn't even air on Toon Disney until later in 2008, and 2. It wasn't until 2009 that Toon Disney became Disney XD, and definitely not Disney Plus because when I first watched it, Disney Plus didn't even exist at that time. I would say other, and the platform I first watched it on was actually Family Channel because I grew up in Canada and Family used to be like the Canadian equivalent of Disney Channel until Chorus Entertainment launched their feeds of Disney Channel in both English and French, and when Chorus relaunched Disney XD over there later on following the previous feeds rebranding as Family Charged and later WildBrain TV as a sister network of Family, the Chorus Disney XD reran Phineas and Ferb for 2 years until 2017. So Family Channel was pretty much my introduction to the show outside of the print advertisements that I saw at Walt Disney World. So with that said, now I'm going to jump over to our brand new Twitter poll. And this time we did get a more well-known Phineas and Ferb song with Gitchee-gitchee-goo as well as My Undead Mummy. So our question for this week is, what is your favorite song from hashtag Phineas and Ferb? Hashtag Danville Discussion poll. And I've listed down A. Backyard Beach, B. Swinter, C. My Undead Mummy, or D. Gitchee-gitchee-goo. So if you're a listener of this podcast and you want to pick your favorite song out of these four, you can go onto Twitter and search for my alt at Caleb the PNF Guy or hashtag Danville Discussion poll, and then you can go ahead and make your voice heard over there. And that's all I've got for this week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Danville Discussion. As for me, you can find me on my Facebook page at Real Caleb Dirksen, on my Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok pages at Caleb Dirksen2 with the number 2, on my alternate Twitter page at Caleb the PNF Guy, on my Instagram pages at Caleb.Dirksen for my main page or at Caleb Flynn Fletcher for my alternate page, and on my DeviantArt page at Caleb Dirksen20. You can also find me on Discord by typing the username Caleb Dirksen in 2 words and then the code number 4600. And if you go to the invite link in the description below, it'll also invite you to my Discord server so that you can talk with me about anything, including this podcast or my other content. And you can also find me on YouTube. Just search for Caleb Dirksen and look for the icon of me as a soldier. As for this podcast, we are available to listen on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and you can also find us on Anchor by using your Apple or Android device or going on the web at anchor.fm/Caleb-Dirksen. It'll take you directly to the Danville Discussion page. And now, I'm releasing my podcast on Patreon for early access by people who want to support me over there. I put my Hamster and Gretel episode on Patreon for my patrons 2 days before releasing it to the public, so if you want to support my work and get some great rewards all at once, which also includes getting access to my content before anyone else, then you can become a patron on patreon.com/CalebDirksen. And if you listen to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast service, do you mind just going out there to rate and review this show? That would be just great, but only if it's respectful and not a case of cyberbullying. And if you are listening to this as a video on YouTube, then press that like button on our video and leave us a little comment with your thoughts about this episode that I've talked about. You can also share your feedback by sending us an email at danvillediscussion@gmail.com with the series and episode title in the subject line. Join us next time, and I'm gonna go and talk about episode 2 of Hamster and Gretel, featuring Recipe for Disaster and Math Punch. Tune in next time for the latest episode of the Danville Discussion and all things related to Phineas and Ferb and beyond. Now, with that said, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, this is Caleb, over and out. This podcast was created strictly and only for entertainment and information purposes. It is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company, Disney Television Animation, or their affiliates. All and any names, images, clips, sounds, or other items related to Phineas and Ferb, Milo Murphy's Law, Hamster and Gretel, and other Disney properties are trademarks and or copyrights of their respective holders. All original content from this podcast is the intellectual property of the Danville Discussion and the host or hosts running the podcast unless otherwise noted.
Gitchee-gitchee-goo means that I love you.